Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today I'm speaking with William Reusch. William is a high school teacher in California, and he also moderates a group for the Heterodox Academy for the K through 12 education group. Hi, William. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Um, so I've been following some of your stuff because I saw your interview with James Lindsay.
hmm
So if you could do like a brief introduction, why, like what you're talking about, why you got into it, and then I'm going to throw a couple of conspiracy theories at you.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Yeah, I've been teaching high school for about 14 years. Did my student teaching in Pennsylvania, and then moved out to Los Angeles, and I've taught in just every kind of environment you can imagine. So I've taught public and private, charter and regular, and in the hood and in Beverly Hills. I've kind of been all over. And I started to see a lack of viewpoint diversity and just different things that happened in my life where I started to realize that my ideas of what was true or untrue were actually more complicated than I thought. And I was in my, early to mid 30s, so this is kind of jarring. But I decided to go into it as opposed to run away from it because I'm an educator, and how can I tell kids to be lifelong learners if I'm not willing to do it myself? So in that, I started my own podcast about different perspectives and things like that. And I've just tried to find other teachers who are interested in what I am, which is challenging the status quo, no matter what it is, and trying to improve education any way we can.
Oh, thanks a lot. And okay, I'll put the links to your podcast and everything. If anyone hasn't heard it, should check it out because there is a lot of good stuff on there. And you'll hear different viewpoints on a lot of these things. One of the things, okay, like I said, conspiracy theories, and I've spoken to a couple of people about this, but they're also outside of education.
Mm-hmm.
One was a psychologist. I'm looking at the stuff that's coming up through the education system, right? So, and then I'm looking at, and I don't know why I just started looking at these curriculums. It just because it just seemed odd. You see the K through 12 math curriculum in Seattle, and it's
Mm-hmm.
racially diverse maths, and I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And then I'm looking at the way race is being talked about and how they're teaching kids. And now that's in Canada, I believe it's three other provinces that are full bore with it. A couple are partially, and then some are dipping a toe here and there. And I'm just seeing it across the U.S. In state after state. In some states where you wouldn't suspect like something like that going through, it is. Uh, Now, what worries me about that? Like, I have two big worries about that. The first one is I look back to, like, I'm old enough when I was a teenager when the Bloods and the Crips were, like that, all that was going on in LA and then across the states. And then there's a white supremacist reaction to that. I mean, they're always a reaction to one another. And when they're talking about countering the gang movements or countering the white supremacists, it's like, okay, they go after loner kids, they go after kids who are disenfranchised, they go after kids who feel like they're victims that they're set upon. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm reading, like I've read, Crenshaw and Butler and McIntosh and just, I mean, what's her name? D'Angelo. I've read
Robin
Applebaum.
DiAngelo,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Like I've been reading this stuff, and then like individual papers. Like I follow that near real peer review, and if this is what they're teaching kids, and they're teaching kids to figure out what's separate, figure out who oppressed you, who you've oppressed, figure out why you can't succeed, basically telling them that you can't succeed and this is why. And all I can see is that's a smorgasbord for extremists of any type. So if white supremacists want to come in, get a bunch of kids, they're gonna have a lot more to choose from. If you know, whatever, socialists. I mean, if you look at in Europe, in the UK especially, and look at how many Muslim kids that were raised there went to go fight for ISIS, they're being taught in the mosque, but at the same time, or if they're being taught that in school, that you're disenfranchised, you're a victim, these guys who give them a simple solution on how not to be a victim, they're going to follow it. So am I making too much of this, or am I like, is there less of this going on than I think? Is it like I said, am I wearing a tinfoil hat with all this?
Well, there's a lot there. So, as you're talking, I was like, "Oh, I can address that." I think the big picture would be So how big is this? It's pretty big, but it's at the same time it seems bigger. So what I mean by that is the colleges of education have been completely overrun by this idea. Okay, so it's not in the hard sciences everywhere. It is in Seattle in that math curriculum, but it's not in the math curriculum in Texas. I don't even think Texas state standards have Jim Crow on it. So there still is the extremes the other way too. But the colleges of education are all kind of consumed by this wokeness, and the teachers that the national government and the state governments hold up, especially in the democratic states, the blue states, would they hold up as like the most social justice oriented. So the national teachers of the year, I talked to some of them on my podcast and stuff, but as soon as I gave a little bit of pushback, they stopped talking to me, and it was very respectful. I just was curious, but all of the national teachers of the year, many of the state teachers of the year are all pushing a really hard social justice agenda. So if the ideal teachers, quote unquote, and the colleges of education are all part of this, even if that's only 2% of the population, or even a small percentage of education, it's the most influential parts. So it's almost like the cliche thing of if you dominate the universities in Hollywood, then that's it's all just an avalanche from there. So there's an element of that's true, and also it's not a conspiracy tinfoil hat thing. I think that more what it is people just don't know what it is. People assume that it's good and they just let it go, and they're going to let it go and progress more and more and more. And we just haven't established where the line is, because when someone draws a line saying this is too far, they get smashed. So you don't draw. Brett Weinstein at Evergreen's a perfect example of that. He just drew a line. He was very, very woke, very progressive. He rode a Schwinn to school every day. And I mean, he is, a Bernie Sanders supporter. Like, he's all on the left. But then he said, no, this is my line. And they smashed him and threatened him physically. So it's the lack of line. And it's a question that I heard Jordan Peterson ask, and I've asked a lot of people myself, is what is the line of too far progressive? We know what too far to the right is. Racial purity stuff, things like that. What is too far to the left? And there hasn't been a consensus about that. There are things that if on the right it goes too far, then a Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson go, whoa, that's too far. But I don't know what too far, where Rachel Maddow would say, whoa, that's too woke. I don't think we've seen that yet. So because of that, it adds a lot of kind of fear in people's eyes of where is this going to go.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm completely an outsider on this. Don't have kids. I'm just looking at it from the outside. But like, my next concern on that is, okay, growing up in the 70s, going to school, we were taught the civil rights ethic, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, people are different, but let's focus on the similarities. Let's focus on let's focus on what we have in common. Treat everyone the same. Treat everyone respectfully, and no one person by any characteristic is better than another, right? Like, obviously you can take the extremes, but now I'm like, okay, if this is how you're teaching kids not to be racist, and you're focusing on being hyper racialized to not be racist, which I don't think will work. Like, my other concern is the overcorrection going the other way. So I heard you talking with I believe she works in education, and you were talking about I think I have it open here. We can give you her name. Okay, I think it was Ileana Redstone.
Oh, Ilana Redstone. Yeah, she's a brilliant professor at University of Illinois. Yeah.
You were talking with her about some of this stuff, and you're like, the kids are going to rebel, and kids are always rebellious. But if it is, yes, they are always rebellious, but are they going to rebel in so much that it's an overcorrection in the other direction? Because I see that coming from the right. You talk about the woke, the woke on the left or whatever, but the red pilled are just as crazy.
Agreed.
And you're seeing, a pushback on that, which is also anti-education, because I think there's some on the left as well, and I'm just like, where does that leave us? Like, we used to have crazies, but then we had people who were fighting for truth, if you want to call it that. I mean, those are my two concerns. Like, are we setting up kids to be picked off, and are we setting up for major overcorrection?
Yeah, so radicals on one side go radicals on the other. I think that's why we have Trump. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, it's hard to argue that that's not why we have Trump. It was 2015 was when the whole thing happened at Yale with Nick Christakis, where people were yelling at him for just saying, hey, we should allow kids to wear whatever Halloween costumes. It was this big thing, and that's when the safe spaces started and all of that stuff. And that's all it took to tip the scales a little bit more in the side of Trump. So that's where it started, and we wouldn't get a Trump if there wasn't that kind of push. So yeah, radical on one side goes to radical on the other. But where I think the left radical is more dangerous is, again, we don't recognize it as the average citizen in America doesn't look at that and say, oh, that's dangerous. Where we look at the kids marching with tiki torches in Virginia, we go, oh, that's dangerous. We look at white supremacists and neo-Nazis, and overwhelmingly we go, terrible idea. But when the Jussie Smollett thing happened, and overwhelmingly a lot of people who are in Hollywood or wherever said, like, well, it's okay because it's a deeper problem than just this one guy. And they couldn't say what he did was really, really bad. That's where my issue is the PR is just way better for the left. The PR, it looks way better. So it's harder to protest against it. So yeah, I think kids might get radicalized, but very soon, as soon as you start throwing out some sort of racial slur or something like that, people go, whoa, no, that's not what we're doing here. But that's not happening as much on the other side. Ben Shapiro will cut that dead in its tracks. Yeah. And I don't know if the other side will.
But okay, speaking of stuff like that, I don't want to stray too much off education, because I think it's just because I think if you don't fix the education, you're not going to fix anything downstream from there, right?
That's why I'm doing it, yeah.
But like the race thing, and the way this is talking about race, so you had people of color, then it was BIPOC, which is black and indigenous people of color, who are more oppressed than other people of color. So other people of color should give the black and indigenous people of color space. So just like they would say, white people step back, now they're saying BIPOC get up front, people of color go behind them. And then recently, I've been seeing stuff like, even though black people were brought to these states as slaves, and they were enslaved, because they were enslaved by the colonizer and brought over by the colonizer, they helped the colonial powers, so they helped the genocide of the natives. So, like, the natives are even more oppressed than the people who were slaves. Now, that's not a way to talk about racism. Like, that is inherently racist. Someone I know, I don't know, she's a human rights activist. She's an ex-Muslim. She's also an ex-Muslim activist. She started Ex-Muslims in North America, one of the people who started it. She did a really good thread on intersectionality. Where it started from, what its merits are, because intersectionality has some merits. Like, what it's talking about is important.
Well, that's where it started, right? In the Ford factory?
Yeah, GM, I think it was.
GM, okay, yeah.
And then she went down and listed, okay, here's how it hurts, the intersections that you're actually talking about, the marginalized people within the marginalized communities, here's how it hurts us. By the end of it, by people who are, progressive, woke, anti-racist, whatever, they're telling her that, oh, you sound and think white. And she's a Pakistani woman. Now, if David Duke said that to a black person, like, you sound white, it would go crazy. But these woke people are telling, a Pakistani woman that, oh, what you're saying, that's white thinking. And that's directly from the literature. Those are for public schools. Like, a private school can do more, what they want. Like, faith-based schools, I don't know what the laws are in the States for those. They can do more or less what they want, as long as they pass exams of a certain level, right? But how much leeway does a teacher have? Like, here, you have to teach this stuff. And, like, you're a teacher, you look at it and go, this is nonsense. Like, how much leeway do you have on what you have to teach?
It depends on the school. It depends on the school district. It depends on public or private charter, all of that kind of stuff. I just want to go back to, I don't know if you read the Douglas Murray book, Madness of Crowds.
Yep.
Okay. Like that whole book is basically about highlighting the hypocrisy. And this is something that I got into with my conversation with James Lindsay, and I'm seeing it again, is you, I mean, even with you, it's like you're trying to make sense of this. You're taking this seriously, and you're going, okay, I'm listening, I'm reading, I'm trying to like now fit this together, and I'm seeing just there's too much hypocrisy. There's too many problems with this. And and I see you like sincerely trying to figure it out. And I think a lot of people are sincerely trying to figure it out. But I just like, part of what makes me good at my job is I'm just a simpleton. I just can make things really simple. It doesn't make sense. You can't figure it out. You can't. And that's the whole point I think that Douglas Murray is trying to make, and that a lot of, if Eric Weinstein can't figure it out, I mean, like it's not meant to be read like that. And the people that are following it, they haven't read it and put this much effort into it. It is nonsense. I mean, it is. And of course, if you highlight the hypocrisy, the pivots are built into the theory that you can't prove it wrong because it's rooted in postmodernism. So it's not, I think that, I did it too, but I think that we're kind of spinning our wheels and just frustrating ourselves, just getting angry and more angry and more pissed off and more just frustrated when we try to figure this out. I don't think it's something that you can figure out. What I've tried to do just recently is now just go talk to people as individuals and see what is really going on that you're buying into this. There's something deeper going on. There's some sort of level of anger, or you've been hurt by people, or you're really struggling with your own kind of maybe psychological issues or whatever it might be. And, I'm not a therapist, but, if you're subscribing to these ideas, there's a reason why. It's not because the ideas are good. So I just want to just put that out there, because I think all of us are wasting a lot of time trying to make sense of this. And I don't think it can be
I'm
done.
not trying to make sense of it. I was trying to point out what I was trying to point out is like, these people are calling themselves anti-racist, yet they're telling,
Right.
and then like they're gonna say, oh well, you're playing identity. You're talking about. I'm like, yes, she's a Pakistani woman. She's brown, and you're telling her that she's sounding white, and you're saying you're anti-racist. Like, I'm trying to point these things out. When I talk to my friends, I'm 50. I have friends who are, give or take a few years my age, and they'll put up something about, oh, whiteness is bad. I'm like, do you know? And it's like, Facebook page. I'm making this Facebook page up, like Anti-Racism Coalition or something like that, right? I'm like, do you know where that comes from? It's I don't know if you've read the book by Jonathan Rauch, Kindly Inquisitors.
No, I haven't.
Okay, great book. It came out in '93, and he wrote about the fatwa that Ayatollah had on Salman Rushdie, and he was also talking about the religious right, but then at the same time he was talking about what he called the humanitarian threat. So he calls the Enlightenment liberal science, and he said there's two types of fundamentalist threats, or two types of authoritarian threats to liberal science. There's the fundamentalist one, which is the religious right and the Ayatollahs and all that. And he said there's the humanitarian one, and he was bringing up cases in universities in the early 90s and the late 80s about, we have to have this speech code because we need to stop racism. So this was pre-critical race theory, pre-intersectionality, or just around when it was starting, but it was more of the postmodern stuff. And this is what this is. So it's like, I speak to a friend of mine and then, well, why do you want to do that? It's like, well, don't you want to fight racism? And that's what it is. It's like they think they're fighting racism. And, it's just, James Lindsay equated this to a faith. And when I first got back overseas and started seeing it, I'm like, this is faith-like.
Yeah, it is.
And just like people of faith, like, the amount of Christians who don't read the Bible, the amount of Muslims that don't read the Quran, especially the Muslims, they can't read it because it's in Arabic and they don't understand it. But so friends of mine who didn't do this in school, didn't do it, all of a sudden say, oh, it's anti-racist, or they take a diversity class at work. It's like, oh, I got to put this in action. They don't know where it comes from. And I'm trying to point that out to them. I'm like, this is not all that it's cracked up to be, right?
No, it's not. No, but again, the PR is so good. I mean, it's probably similar to Christianity, where in Christianity, I mean, how many Christians actually live as Christians? Try to mimic their life off of Jesus. If they did, the world would be a great place. I mean, Christianity at its core, there's a lot of beautiful, beautiful things in it, but we don't. It's a hard way to live, and not many people do. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just like, I'm thinking like if it's a kickball game, and then some people say, you have these rules, I have these rules. Like, you can't play a game. And then if you say, like, well, I got you, it's like, well, no, you didn't get me because I took 3 steps to the left. And if I do that, then I can do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, I didn't know those rules. It's like, well, it's part of the rules where I am this person, so I get to make up my own rules when I go between second and third base. It's just going to get more and more muddled. But I'm sorry, just getting off the track about in education. I think it depends on the school, but giving pushback, you do get labeled as a racist, sexist, homophobe. And I talked about a woman. I mean, there's a bunch of these, and I have avoided it just for different reasons. But I have friends who. One friend, I talked about it on one podcast. She didn't want to wear a rainbow on her ID, and her colleague said, like, well, you're promoting homophobia. And she has a gay brother that she was the officiant at their wedding. She's not. and she's like, well, no, I don't want to virtue signal. I don't want to say like, hey, I'm so woke. I just don't want to do that. And so, it happens where kids will come back, and if they fail a test, I've had teachers who say, like, a kid fails a test, and they say, like, oh, it's because I'm racist. It's like, no, look, here's what you got wrong. No, I'm racist. Then they have to go in front of the administration and prove that they're not racist. And it's just, so again, I think it's just, you kind of learn to just keep your mouth shut. I have friends that are very progressive, wealthy, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, private schools with a lot of celebrity kids and stuff. And they say that, it's all these diversity and inclusion, equity, assemblies and stuff like that. And he's like, I see what it is. And he's like, I just keep my mouth shut. It's a good job. I get paid well. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. So I think a lot of it is keeping our mouths shut. And it's just ironic because yesterday was Martin Luther King Day. And the big thing Martin Luther King was all about is, letters from a Birmingham jail was you stand up against injustice, and you don't sit idly by as things that you see as wrong continue. And it's so strange. I actually had my class do a comparison between what happened, letters from a Birmingham jail, and what happened to Brett Weinstein up in Evergreen, about drawing a line and saying that I'm not going to stand for this stuff. And it's a stretch. And people say, like, oh, you can't compare those two. But I think it's just very fascinating that, that was in the mid 1960s. Now, whatever it is, 55 years later, we're looking at applying Martin Luther King's ideas to anti-racism. I just think it's fascinating, and I don't think it's something that you can't do. I think that principles exist on a greater scale than whatever the surface issue is at hand. The greater principle of standing up against what you believe to be right. And last thing I'll say is, like, I'm pushing back on this because I believe it is better for the marginalized groups. I care. I'm a school teacher, man. Like, I care about kids. I care about kids who are marginalized, poor, discriminated against, all that kind of stuff. Truly. And I don't think the way that social justice is going is helping them. I think it's making them worse. And I have experiences, and I've read stuff, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. So that is why I'm pushing back. It's not because I don't like these groups. It's the opposite. It's not because I don't want to educate them. It's the opposite. I don't think that it's helping. I think it's hurting.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm the same way. Like, I don't think this is the way you do it. I don't think it's helping kids. I'll give you another example from up here. And these are anecdotal, obviously. A friend of mine's got a kid who's about to start the first grade. So I was taking his son to go Halloween shopping, like costume shopping, right? And he's telling me that he heard other children in the store telling their folks, I can't wear that because I might offend someone. These are kids who are 8 or 9 years old.
Right.
Now, yes, teach kids not to offend people. But a little kid going by a Halloween costume shouldn't have to worry that if he's going to be Aladdin or she's going to be Pocahontas, or hell, if he wants to be Pocahontas, I don't give a rat's ass. Let the kid pick out a Halloween costume that's going to make them happy. Like, I'm just worried about the neuroses you're giving little children. And, it's like, I'm wondering if part of this is, because you had a talk with someone and you talked about, I think you said something like, well, if Google was good enough, I didn't need to be, I know you were joking, right? If Google was good enough, I don't need to be here. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a huge issue there. And okay, I'm not trying to slight education or teachers or whatever. I think there are problems in the system as far as I can see them, but it's not like, this, the Google thing. When I was a kid, we learn how to use the library, the card catalog, and whatever. You go get a book, you go to the reference section. Growing up and going to college and university, like they're using the reference libraries. Like, are kids being taught how to use Google for research? Like, are they being taught about the algorithm giving you what it thinks you want, not what you need? Because you can Google search something and you can find out the Earth is flat, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
Is there some kind of because I know you're working on something like more of that, like the critical training for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, if they don't know how to research, how are they going to be? If you don't have the right knowledge, you can think well, but if the knowledge you're getting, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah, no, they don't know. I have to explain to them what social media is, and I basically have this book. I just grab a binder. I'm like, I'm Mark Zuckerberg. This is my Facebook. Hey, you want to put your stuff in my Facebook and I can show it to all your friends? Come on, put your stuff in my book. Here, give me all your stuff, put it in my book. And then I go over to someone else, like, hey, look at what Cindy gave me. Look at what's in the book. And you can share that. And you don't have to mail anything. She can see it. You put your stuff in your book and then you can share it. Hey, tell me all about yourself so other people can see. And then Bobby can read about you and blah, blah. And then before you know it, I have this big book full of stuff. And I go, so you use all social media. How much have you paid? 0. Okay. How are they the richest people in the world if you've paid them 0? And they don't know. I go, okay, well, here's how it is. I have all your information now. This is mine now. It's mine. I own this now. It's not your picture anymore. It's my picture. It's not your information. It's my information. I explain what data mining is, and I say, okay, now, Michelle in the back wants to start a business. You want to advertise your business, Michelle? What kind of business is it? It's a comic book store. So who are you looking for? You're looking for boys and girls between the ages of, 14 and 18. Here you go. What city? Los Angeles? What comic books in particular? Any special kind? Here you go. Here, I have the most catered advertising, people, the appointed advertisers for you. Here you go. Pay me for that. I'll give it to you. And they just go, oh, they didn't know. When you don't know how the richest people in your country made their money, that might be a problem. So no, they don't know how they're getting their information. They don't know that Wikipedia is it's a collection of sources. Wikipedia is not a source. You have to click on the number and go down and then follow that. And then I do a project in my government class and my civics class where I have them choose a news story. And then they have to do 4 different sources, minimum 4 different sources from across the political spectrum. And then highlight what was left out, what was included, what was the word use, all that kind of stuff. And it's a great project. I love reading it too because they realize, perfect example would be there was a church shooting maybe a year and a half ago in Texas. And, a more left-wing paper says a guy walks in with an AR-15, shoots up a church, and then is stopped or then is apprehended or something like that. Okay, and then the right-wing paper says guy goes into a church, shoots up, and is killed by an NRA firearms instructor before he can kill anyone else. And both are true. Mm-hmm. So is AR-15 good or bad? The right-wing one says AR-15s, yes, let's get more of them in the hands of people. The left-wing one says let's keep AR-15s away. But the truth is in the middle. That's what my whole podcast is all about. There is truth to the wokeness. There's truth to the idea. I believe that in the idea of privilege, clearly. I believe that there's still racism. I think there's clearly residuals based on the systemic racism of the past. That's not what my issue is at all. The issue is where it gets further than that. So I think that the kids just need to understand what that truth is multidimensional. There's all different perspectives. Human beings are telling this story. Last thing I tell them is like, even if you are intentionally trying not to be biased, you're still going to be biased, because if you want to say, like Rebecca is thin, that's one thing. But you think about like who becomes writers, people who are good writers, people who are very, very descriptive in their language, and their English teachers their whole life are like, oh, it's so beautiful, you should be a writer. And they go, oh, I'll be a writer. Cool, I'll go write for the New York Times. But Cindy is gaunt. Cindy is slender. Cindy is emaciated. Cindy is thin. It's going to steer you down a certain way of thinking. So you have inherent biases, and you're going to put that in your writing, and that writing is going to start steering people's ideas. So I think that I don't think they know how to research, and I don't know if kids or adults recognize that they're being led to think certain things. You only watch Fox News, you're going to get one side of the truth. You only watch CNN, you're going to get one side of the truth, and it's really complicated. These issues are really complicated.
Oh yeah, okay. Like even for adults, I don't think, people don't realize, or they don't have the wherewithal to. They might say, oh yeah, the algorithm does this, and they don't have the wherewithal to go in there and, okay, I read a story on CNN, I'm going to go read one on Fox. Like they don't know to do that, right? Or, but it's also just, okay, like let's just say Google for sake of example. You go to Google, you get the search page, you type in a question. So you're doing, you said you're doing civics, right? So let's say you're doing some history and you want to talk about abolitionism and all that. So you say, okay, do a report on the Civil War. So a kid goes in, types in Civil War, and when he gets a results page, instead of just listing off a bunch of things on the Civil War, if Google broke it down to a bunch of tabs and said, okay, here's history, here's science, here's geography, here's fiction, whatever, like here's news reports from the day. Like, so the science could be the engineering, it could be about medicine, like the triage and all that came out of it, right? Mm. And if the kid wants to read some fiction about the Civil War, it can go on like historical fiction, right? Just that little thing on Google, and they can use, like I said, this is just me dreaming stuff up. They can use like the Library of Congress card catalog system of how they classify these things. So just that small change in Google, like if you go to the fiction section when you look up Civil War, and you expect to have facts there, then there's something wrong with you, right? And also, I think Google, more than the other ones, but Google should definitely act as librarians. They're the curators of information. They're not the holders, and they shouldn't be disseminating to us what they think we want. They should curate it. They should act like librarians.
They should, but public libraries are publicly funded. They didn't have a dog in that fight, but Google does. Google is trying to take over the world. I'm a capitalist. My wife is a small business owner, an entrepreneur, and work hard, and I love capitalism. I think that it's great, but it needs to be regulated, and clearly the tech is not being regulated. I mean, nearly enough. So you pay enough money, they will put your ideas top. They will highlight your book. The card catalog will not be based on alphabetical order, so to speak. It'll be just based on, whoever wants to be in the front of the card catalog will be there. And that is a huge problem. I agree with you. I think that's the way Google should be run, but how do we get it there? I don't see the CEOs of Google or of these social media companies, Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, just going, you know what? There's a lot less profit in it, and I'm sure the shareholders would be cool with this, but we're going to do the right thing. I just don't. I would love for that to be the case, but I don't think so. Unless someone wants to come along and do something better and present it in a way that's better, but I don't know if people care. I don't know if they really care about getting the truth. I don't know if they really care about getting, that nuance. I don't know if they're trying to find the truth. I think that they're okay with the way that it is and just being given what they're given. It's almost like a Noam Chomsky, manufacturing consent idea. Like, just here, you want this. Okay, cool. Then I'll take it. I think we're very passive in the way that we live our lives and the information that we consume. So I agree with you. That'd be ideal, but I don't know how it'll happen. Maybe in education we push these ideas onto the next generation and they fight back. Or they become a CEO of Google. They stand up and they say, "This isn't right. We're going to do this better. We're going to create a better product, and that will be profitable." I believe that capitalism can be the way to make the world a better place. I also think it'd be a way to make the world a worse place, but I think you can use the free market and get people better and still turn a tremendous profit. I think it's more complicated maybe. I don't know.
I mean, okay, free market with social nets, because I mean, you need to have, like you said, the regulation,
For sure.
You can't let people run amok. I wanted to ask you something about this. It's just because I've been speaking to a couple of people in education. I was speaking with, I don't know if you know her, Courtney Jones. She did the Clear the List.
I do.
Okay.
Yep. Support to teach. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Okay. And yeah, that's incredible. Like, and I saw that, and I was amazed because teachers are asking for pencil sharpeners, and I'm like, really? You can't put pencil sharpeners in classrooms?
Right.
Like, I didn't know what a Title I school is. I'm in Canada. I'm not in the States, right? So I started looking at this. I mean, obviously, you're a teacher. You don't know. You might not know all the answers to this. But is it like a cookie cutter approach? Okay, Title I schools get this, so it doesn't matter if it's a Title I school in your rural Missouri or a Title I school in the project somewhere, right? Oh, this is what you're getting. These are your resources. Is that like how it works, or?
I'm not an expert in this. I go in the classroom and do my thing. But I believe it's just, from the federal government, you get X amount of money. But how much the federal government should be involved in education, period, is up for valid debate because it's not technically constitutional. Like, it's supposed to be a state issue. It's supposed to be little laboratories in each state running an educational system, and then whichever one worked, and they look at that. It's not supposed. I mean, it's nowhere in the Constitution. This is 10th Amendment. It's supposed to defer to the states. But the whole idea of slavery and segregation and stuff like that really threw a wrench in that idea because you don't want kids being taught horrible, horrible things. It's not good for all of us. But as far as funding goes, it's a mixed bag because I've been at schools where you were limited to like X amount of copies per week. So you couldn't, because they had limits on paper and stuff or really old textbooks. But you can still make an awesome classroom. And I've also been at like schools in bad neighborhoods that were well funded. I don't know if it's a money issue. I think it's a bureaucracy issue. I think there's a lot of overhead. I think there's a lot of experts and analysts and a lot of consultants and stuff that are taking salaries. And it's absurd that that teachers, and there's a lot of them, and I know what Courtney does, like there's a lot of them that don't have access to markers. It's like, this is absurd. But you have 5 specialists who are here to like break down all this stuff. You have maybe a diversity and inclusion specialist who brings down a $80,000 a year salary, right? So these kids are going to have a diversity and inclusion specialist, but they're not going to have markers. It's a mismanagement of resources. I posted something recently about Martin Luther King speaking out against the military-industrial complex, and I can't formally endorse her, but I love Tulsi Gabbard, and she pushes back on that too. It's not that we don't want defense. We want defense. People are like, we have to defend ourselves. Like, yeah, but we're cutting blank checks. I mean, if you look up like a bolt, like a regular bolt in a fighter jet is something like $20,000 because they just get whatever they want. I mean, like, it's just not efficient. We're not efficient with our money. Okay. We're not efficient with our resources. We need to be more efficient.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I did 13 years in war zones work as a contractor. I've seen the waste in military. I've seen, it's nuts. Yeah, I mean, okay, like the money thing, I know it's not necessarily a money problem, but like wasn't even so much the funding. It's like just the approach. Like, yes, you can say, okay, you have X. Like, do they say here's X amount of dollars, use it how you see fit, or here's X amount of dollars, you have to spend this on books, this on that, and then like the testing. Like, I know it's not all schools, and I know but like the standardized testings, like, so here are the regulations. Like, so again, it's just from an outsider, like, you're teaching the kids to take these tests, you're preparing them to do that. instead of trying, okay, like, let's say a school district got funding and it's in a low income area, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the school shouldn't have to do that, but instead of spending, let's say, money on, like you said, one of these administrators, whatever, because I think there's a lot of bloat all the way through myself, like from what I'm reading. Okay, you do that for a couple after school programs. So you can have kids play games or whatever. And I like I don't know if you know Free Range Kids. I like their kind of idea that
Mm-hmm.
Lenore Skenazy pushes.
Mm-hmm.
You have an adult there to make sure they're not dying, but there's very minimal supervision. You let the kids kind of work it out, right? But because a lot of these areas, it's not just the money. It's what's the home life like? What's their neighborhood that they're growing up in? There's all these other things. So if you give kids a space and not waste it, and it is waste on these diversity people and all that. Like it's just a lot of waste as far as I'm concerned. Like how much does a school district have like choice? How much does an individual school have? Like,
it's usually up to the district. Then it goes even back to like the principal and the administrators at the individual school, usually for how to spend that as well. Like it kind of like filters down. But yeah, I mean the after school programs and stuff like that. When I was teaching in East LA, and it was like a pretty tough school. Like I got there 2 hours early and stayed 2 hours late, and I'd lift with them, or I taught them some martial arts, and I would help them study. Like I was there all the time, and a lot of kids came because they're just like, we have nothing to do. And then they go out and they get into trouble. So like there's not enough of that focus of like, the community. And there are a lot of schools that do a great job. But I try to like look at them and say, how do we do this better? But the teachers know, and sometimes administrators, even great ones, there's a reason why I've seen this happen where, teachers are all kind of in like one crew, and then one of them gets promoted and becomes an administrator, and all of a sudden they're like the pariah. They're like, oh, now they're on the other side. They're the bad guy. And there is always, and I've been at a bunch of schools, like I've been at like 4 different schools, like in LA, like they're contentious. There's always going to be the administration versus the teachers. Administration going, teachers, you don't understand what I'm dealing with. Teachers going, you don't understand what I'm dealing with. So there is that tension about like what is the best way to spend this money. And I don't know. I don't want to be an administrator. I never want to be an administrator. Okay, I want to be in the classroom talking to kids because it's really complicated. I don't know how to spend the money the best way. I don't know, but I don't think it's necessary, and I do think that it's being spent poorly. So it's like I'm casting stones without giving a solution, which isn't ideal.
No, I mean, okay, and like I agree with you that it's not always money, but money certainly helps to fix other things. But because, like I said, I was trying to look at this because I got back from overseas in 2014, and I just like, what the hell happened? I was gone for 13 years, and all of a sudden, it's just gone insane.
In what way?
Well, everything. Like you can't say this. Okay, like I was never a vocal speaker about anything. I'm an atheist. My family's Muslim. I saw some of this stuff about like Islam and ex-Muslims, and it's just like, oh, you can't say that about Islam because it's Islamophobia. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Or the whole Ben Affleck, Sam Harris thing on, like stuff like that, and it just. The Christakis in Missouri, that journalism professor is calling for people to come beat up a student journalist for reporting on a protest. I mean, come on. Like, if that's not insane, I don't know what is. So, like, I'd be trying to, like, look at this, and then you see that the thing that came out of Harvard, right? Oh, they're actually holding Asian kids back and and that's to help fight white supremacy, apparently. Right? I'm like, okay, come on. Now, I've never been a person who's been in favor of. I understand affirmative action. I understand why it was necessary at a certain point. I can still see some reasoning for it, but I think at the university level. Okay, first of all, if you're not fixing the feeder system, it's too late at the university level, right? Like it's just too bad, and not too bad for the kids. Like it's what I like. Here's just, again, me thinking about these things and just, I don't know if it will work or not, but until you can get that feeder system fixed. So if you have people who show potential, but they don't quite have the grades, they might not make it in, instead of bumping them up and saying, okay, you're going to Harvard Law School or Harvard Medical School, right? And there's a good chance you're going to flunk out, because there's a good chance most people flunk out of that because they're hard. Why not say, okay, you know what? We'll reserve a space for you the following year. Go to a community college and take these courses and prep yourself, because you're not, you have a lot of potential, you look like you'll do good, but you're not quite there, and you won't do well at Harvard, right? That's preparing the kids to actually succeed. They might end up liking that community college and stay there, right? You never know. Which is good for the college, good for the community. Like fixing the back end of it, I just think that we got this problem here, so we're going to patch it up here. And we're going to patch it up by putting people in, and like this, we could call a racist for saying this. Oh, what do you mean they can't do it? I'm like, if they don't have the proper education, if you had to raise up their scores to show that they were able to get in, then they might not be able to succeed in there. And that's going to, it's someone who's a racist is going to say, see, they can't do it.
So, I mean, the Harvard Asian thing is really interesting, because that's one where I think initially I go, oh, yeah, that's good because we want to get more diversity. And then I go the other side, like, oh, that's really bad because now we're struggling because, and especially when you talk about like lumping Asians together, like Japanese are not the same as Filipino as far as like culture goes and stuff like that. Or Hmong, like from Mongolia, and like South Korean, like very different. Like just, I mean, as far as education levels and IQs and all that kind of stuff. Then I talked to a friend of mine who went to Harvard, and he said the reason that he saw it was because a lot of these families that, made grades such a focus, they like the New York Times story, like they go without food sometimes to focus on SAT tutoring. He's like, but what happens is you get kids that are just academically minded and they don't have diversity. And it goes back to the other side of like, it's a lack of diversity again, because it's a diversity of thought, which is the diversity I think we think is so important, is you get kids then, because of the way that they get you into Harvard is SAT scores and grade point average and stuff like that. So it'll be overwhelmingly just like these kids are very robotic about just being able to do really well on tests, and it's a lack of diversity again. So it's just, this stuff's just really complicated. I read a book called Mismatch about affirmative action, and it was really, again, fascinating because I love being like getting my mind blown. But like, oh, I didn't see this side. And there were two big arguments about it, but one of the book was basically that affirmative action hurts poor Black communities the most. It's like, wait a second, isn't that the opposite of what it's supposed to do? So one is if it's affirmative action based to get into university based on race, then they're going to take the best from that race. Who's the best? The ones that can afford tutors, the ones that go to the best schools, the ones that have two parents in the household and get read to every night. So those Black kids have the edge and they get in. The poor Black kids who don't have two parents in the household, who don't have money for a tutor, they're still left behind. That's not the first one. And then the second one is, even when they get in, like you said, they don't have the skills. It's not because they're not capable. It's because they weren't given the skills. So we know this, like we don't lower the standards on a lifeguard. Oh, you're not a good swimmer, but you know what? It's cool because you're a marginalized person. Like, we know that that's bad. They will drown and they'll kill someone. We know that. We know that with surgeons. We know that with everything. But then we make it this arbitrary idea that even if you aren't up to pace, when you get in, you'll step up. Like, I know you're not a great swimmer, but when someone's drowning, you will be able to. It's like, no. And the data shows that the kids who are brought in through affirmative action programs have a way higher dropout rate. And it goes over like what the statistics are. It's way higher. So you go out there and you fail swimming to save someone. How does that make you feel? You go to this school and you get in. Everyone's like, oh, you got into Princeton. Great job. And then you go, I can't hang. What? I didn't learn this in my crappy school in the hood. Like, what's going on? And then you fail out, and now you're the kid who failed out. So if you want to get better at basketball, you don't lower the rim. You don't move the lines. You get them the skills to be better at basketball. If you're trying to get more marginalized people, you want to get more poor kids, white, black, whatever, into major universities, yeah, me too. There are brilliant, untapped, genius minds in these trailer parks and housing projects that we want at these universities. But we have to give them the hard skills. We can't just tell them, oh, that's, again, why I don't like a lot of the wokeness stuff. We can't keep telling them that the world is out to get them. We need to focus on them learning hard math, being a great communicator, learning proper English so they can communicate their ideas well and be taken seriously with their brilliant ideas. I don't think that because of the color of your skin or your background or how much money your parents have or anything like that, that you are any less capable of doing amazing things in the world. You need to be able to be given the skills. You need to do your laps. You need to shoot your free throws, put in that time to grind and be told you got to grind. And then when you do it, you'll be able to succeed and then get them in. We can't, it's not helping them. It's not helping anyone. It's hurting them to let them into these universities. That's my take on it. And it's really frustrating. It's so lazy. Oh, yeah. We want more black kids, so let's just lower it. Like, what? What are you talking about? That's so ridiculous. Like, try harder.
Australia did this last year. I don't know if you saw or not. And it was just to help fight sexism in STEM fields. They lowered the requirements for women to get into engineering.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so to fight sexism, you're implying that women can't compete.
Right.
All right, good for you.
See where that goes. Yeah, see where that goes. Like, how do you think stereotypes start to begin with?
Okay, have you looked at, there's a school in the UK called the Michaela School. I don't know if you, okay.
No.
Okay, check it out. So the woman who started it, the Michaela School, it's like the British equivalent of a charter school.
Okay.
Now, some people accuse her of being draconian and whatever. I think some of them, she's a little stricter than I would like, but they just had their first graduation type of thing. So the first tests of the first class that graduated, that's what they're going to go off to college. They basically blew every other school away, like in the UK. But, she does things like no smartphones in the school. The kids can have like the old Nokia phones, right? But no smartphones. Some of the things that she does, like she's like, oh, the kids are happy, whatever. Like no talking in the halls between classes. Just get out of your class, go to the next class. No, you have your lunchtime, you have your breaks, you're outside, you're playing, fine. That 3 or 4 minutes in between class, go get your stuff, go, and you can look up on the school, they've been doing really well, and they're overbooked, and then some of her stuff I find, like I said, I find it a little harsh. I'm not one of these people who say, oh, you're completely draconian, whatever. Right. I mean, she said something once where parents should respect the rules from the school and the rules of the teacher, and you shouldn't question. And what she meant was if your kid is sent home and the teacher says, okay, they got to write an essay because they were late or they were speaking up or something, right? Instead of, oh, my kid would never do that, how dare you? Or even if you have a complaint, speak to the teacher privately, not in front of the child, so the child doesn't think that, oh, mommy or daddy is going to disrespect the teacher for me, right?
Right.
It's to a united front, and obviously, and then people are like, oh yeah, so if your kid comes home with a black eye because the teacher beat them, you're not going to. And she's like, no, but it's going back to a straightforward, front of the classroom. Teaching the basics, teaching and thinking, and it's showing results.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I know that she did come to a couple of schools out here, and people from schools in Canada and the U.S. have sent people out to Michaela to check it out, see what she's doing. You might be interested in that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I think definitely teaching discipline, teaching, that. Yeah, there are rules, there's structures, discipline, hard work. Those are the messages. Those are the messages, and I've talked to so many students that I've had in the past who are, marginalized, black, brown kids, poor communities, some kids who are homeless and stuff like that. And they're like, my whole life I was told the world is just structured that I can't succeed. And he's like, just one kid I'm thinking of, he's just like, that's bullshit. It's like, yeah, I can do anything. It's like, I didn't realize that till I was like 20. I was like, yeah, well, I'm glad you realized it. Yeah, I agree. You absolutely can. Yeah, I mean, it's just they just need to have they can't run the program. They can't just they're not in charge, and they need to know that, and they need to know that there's a system here. Yeah, so I'll definitely check it out. That's cool.
Her name is Catherine Birbal Singh. So the last name, spell it like it sounds. Singh is Singh. But yeah, obviously, I don't agree with everything I say.
Yeah.
But something's working right. If the kids are doing that well, something's gonna be working right. I don't want to take too much of your time, but going on to the college thing.
Okay.
When I was in high school, you had the option of vocational stuff, right? But I don't know why that got such a bad reputation. And I mean, and it's not like, oh well, you're just saying people are too dumb. But I'm like, like I have a really good friend of mine. He's really good at cabinet making, carpentry, all that. He's awesome. Sure. And he reads, and he's a smart guy. He just didn't like school.
Yeah.
But he went to carpentry. Then like take pride. Like I don't know why. Like yes, if you want to go to university, go to university. But I don't know if that should be our default.
Yeah. I'm on board with you. So the in vogue thing is college prep. So all kids should go to college. Yeah, I hear politicians saying every kid should go get a college degree and blah, blah, blah. And I disagree. I think college, what we're doing is we're telling these kids to go to college. What if I can't afford it? Take out loans. So the whole college loan thing is disgusting on so many levels, from our government, the fact that we're pushing kids into being strapped to this enormous debt, studying things they don't know why they're studying. Okay, college degrees are not as valuable as they used to be. Okay, that's number one. If everyone goes to college, that doesn't set you apart. They're more expensive than they've ever been. And I don't even know if the value is there anymore. I just did a video, I don't know if I posted on my social media yet, but it used to be that this was where you had access to the most brilliant minds and the best libraries. Well, the internet took that away because we have access to, I'll watch a Nick Christakis lecture, a Jordan Peterson lecture, and, like all of these just like brilliant, minds. So I have access to them, access to every library. So what is college really? It feels like a nightclub. It feels like a place where you go and you network with other people. And if you go to a small community college, and you network with those kinds of people. If you go to Princeton, you network with those kinds of people. And then it becomes who you know. And you made this deal because this person was in your sorority or fraternity or in your dorm. And it just feels very elitist. It feels very gross. It feels like it's coming at the expense of the poor, marginalized groups for these elitists who have, like this feeling like, oh, well, I'm in this situation, and it's not going to strap my family to pay for this $60,000 a year tuition. And I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to meet this person whose uncle runs this company. And I mean, that's the way the world works. But what about hard skills? Yeah. What about building cabinets? What about air conditioning repair? Diesel mechanics. Go be a diesel mechanic. You will make a six-figure salary in a few years and always have a job. Like there's so many avenues, even business, like Gary Vaynerchuk and stuff. He's always saying, don't go to college. Like if you want to go to college for business, you can, but I tell students all the time, you can't, or you can just start a business, or you can get a job at a business. People who are high up in careers, they want to share their knowledge. So you can get paid and learn, or pay a ton of money and learn. Like I just think that again, this seems lazy. What do we do after high school? Send them to college. Like, let's think harder. College isn't for everyone. My wife didn't go to college. She's very successful, very brilliant. I know a lot of people that, went to a crappy state school and are very successful. I know a lot of people that went to the best schools and are really lost and don't know what to do with their lives. But kids are buying into this because parents do. I think last thing is I think parents go, like, you said you don't have kids. I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And when they do something good, my 5-year-old won an award at his school for most respectful. I was like, damn right, I'm a good dad. Like it was like a gold star for me as a dad. It's like, it wasn't me. There's a lot of people in his life, and he's a great kid. Like, it's not me. So how do you quantify how good of a parent you are? Well, if you tell all your friends, my kid got into Yale, well, then you get a gold star, Mr. Mom and Dad. Like that, it's a lot of that going on. It's the name of the college. It's like a Kia, makes really nice luxury cars now, but no one wants that. Like the Volkswagen Phaeton that came out like 10, 15 years ago was like an amazing V12 luxury car, but no one wanted to pay $80,000 for a Volkswagen. Like, you can get a great education at a state school, at a community college, or on the job, or just backpacking through Europe. But how do you he's backpacking through Europe, he's a bum. Oh, he goes to a state school, he's a loser. He's a truck driver, he's a loser. It's like, well, he makes more money, he has more time with his family, he's not in debt. Like, let's think about this a little bit harder. All of this stuff, I think, is about critical thinking, challenging what we just are going blindly through. And let's think a little bit harder about what we're doing. And it goes for all of this, and I think it goes for college as well.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Also, honestly, I really just don't. But I think we've, like home ec, a course like that. People are like, oh, they don't teach it anymore. I'm like, okay. We had home ec in my school. Everyone had to take it. Okay, I'm not telling you I can sew you a suit, but I can darn a sock and I can put on a button, and I knew how to cook a basic meal when I was a teenager, right?
Yeah. But
that also teaches you budgeting skills. It teaches you how to manage your money. It teaches you, home ec's not important, because we don't really need this. And then now they're going back saying we want to teach kids finance. I'm like, you're teaching them all that anyways, and you're giving them skills, right? Is that again a funding thing, or is that a administration thing? Is that who decides that's not worthwhile?
Well, yeah. I mean, they look at how do you quantify this? It's easy to quantify math scores and test scores and stuff like that to show that you're learning. It's very hard to quantify the job that I'm in. Am I a good teacher? Sure. Prove it. Prove it. I'm in the long game. I want a 35-year-old girl or guy to come up to me and say, hey, Mr. Reusch, you know what? I live a great life. It's filled with purpose and meaning, and I have, a lot of, I help a lot of people, and I make a good living, and I blah, 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 blah. And you had something to do with that. Okay, that's what I'm going for. That's kind of down the road. It's not really easily scalable for a business or for any kind of operation. So they're phoning it in, like test scores or something like that. It's hard to test score home ec. I also think that there's a big part of this that gets ignored with the education discussion. And yeah, I don't have a ton of time, but it's the discussion of what's going on at home. Are parents sitting down with their kids and cracking an egg and showing how to make pancakes? Some are good. Are they showing how to sew a button? Some are good. Many are not. We're too fast-paced. We're watching Netflix. We're just throwing our kids in front of a screen and giving them an iPad. We're not this isn't all on the schools. And this is something that Samantha Hedges, who is the co-moderator of my Heterodox Academy group, she brought up, is the fact that school is compulsory. There's an element that goes, oh, well, then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about educating my kids because that's on the school, and then the parents can complain to the school when things don't go right. But the primary teacher should be at home, and the school should be supplementary. You should be reading to your kids at home. You should be helping them to pronounce words at home, all of this stuff. But people are too busy. People have crammed in so much. People are on their phones. People are doing all this stuff, and I am too. Okay, I'm guilty of this. But it's a problem, and it can't all fall on the schools and the school funding and things like that. We want everyone to do things for us, but we got to take responsibility for ourselves, for our loved ones, and try to model something different. If you have a neighbor, bring the neighbor's kids over, and you can do a lesson in your house about how to read. To make friends. They don't even talk to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors. invite them over, have a lesson. You know what I mean? Like there's a big element of that I think is just missing and needs to be a part of the conversation. So.
Okay, and I like everything I said. I was trying to more find out. Like I don't think I agree with you that stuff should start at the home, but I also think there's so many things, and like I don't like we could go on for hours, but like parents don't have enough time because they have to take the kids to hockey practice, to this, to that, to that. Like kids can't be left alone. So parents, so there is no time. Like I think there's so many things that came together at once, and it's not just one fix, right? But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, and like you shouldn't rely on the schools. Like ethics and values and morals should be taught at home. The schools should teach the kids how to think. I mean, there is a division of labor there, right? And parents should help with that. Like I was lucky; I had mom and dad. My mom used to teach in Pakistan before we moved to Canada. So she was into teaching. So I had parents who spent time with us and did all that. So I was lucky. Not everyone has that, but yeah, it's we have to take a share of everything, and it's. But I don't want to, like I said, I should let you go. If you want to let people know where they can find you, your podcast, any last words you want to give out?
Oh, cool. Thank you. I heard the Canadian.
Okay, there you go.
So the podcast is Cylinder Radio. The idea is that it's about different perspectives. So from one side, a cylinder looks like a circle. From one side, it looks like a rectangle. But it's a complex thing. So just trying to think our way through these ideas. So it's typically with a guest, and we have some sort of issue on the table. Sometimes it's controversial, like abortion or racism, and then sometimes it's just like something like mindset. It's all over the place. But I really enjoy it. It's fun to just talk to people and try and spark those ideas. And then I use social media. It's Will Reusch, my name, WILLREUSCH. And again, it's just putting ideas out there to just spark some thought. I'll change my mind all the time on what I think is right or wrong. And some of that is from pushback. So I put myself out there. I believe the whole Teddy Roosevelt man in the arena thing. So I'm going to put myself out there, as embarrassing as it is. And I feel really dorky talking into my phone selfie style. I do it. And then I hope that I put it out there and people go, oh, this is a good idea, or it's a bad idea, and why? And we can just start doing something to get people out of their living life on autopilot. So that's what it is. And if you're interested in educational advocacy, or you're a teacher or anything like that, it's also, as was mentioned, on Facebook. If you type in the search bar, Heterodox K-12 Education Group, and then you have to fill out a little Google form, but it's just a way to start talking about how viewpoint diversity and critical thinking is really important for our schools.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, and thank you everyone for listening.